This video focuses on adding an assignment to your Moodle course. An assignment is where students will actually submit work to you so that it can be reviewed and feedback or a grade can be offered. To add an assignment, we're going to click the Add an Activity or Resource link within the topic to which we want to add the assignment, and then we're going to choose the top activity assignment. We need to give the assignment a name. In this case, we'll call it Industry Essay. Now, the description field becomes important here because you may be using the description field to provide all your instructions to your students, in which case you would simply type all of your instructions here in this field. The better practice, however, would be to create documents that include all of your instructions, links to other resources, your rubrics for guiding student work and providing feedback, so that everything is contained in one or more documents. Those documents can then be linked in this assignment. The advantage to that is that the nuts and bolts of the assignment are not locked into Moodle. They're in a document which you could email to parents, post in another forum, or transfer sometime in the future to a tool that you prefer over Moodle. If everything is typed directly into your Moodle descriptions, they are not as easily transferable to other means of communication or other tools in the future. If you were to follow this approach of using documents, you would simply link them here in the description field. And to do that, let's say I want to click here, a link to a document. I click here on link. If I have gone and gotten a OneDrive share link, then I simply paste the link here. If, on the other hand, I want to actually attach the document, I click this icon and I get my file picker window where I can choose from files already on Moodle, or I can simply upload a file. Let's pretend like we have our rubric in a separate file. And I want to do that because I want to show you some of the settings that we overlooked the first time around. This time I'm going to just share the link. Notice this target option. This specifies what will happen when a student clicks the link. By default, it's going to open in this window or frame, which means when the student clicks the link, Moodle will go away and be replaced with your document. A new window will leave Moodle in place and spawn a whole new browser with the resource in it. You can ignore the other two options. In most cases, it is advisable to open in a new window so that students don't lose their Moodle window when they open a resource. As before, if I click the checkbox here, this description will appear on the main page in Moodle. Unless you have a very few number of assignments, that is not advisable. Let's look next at the availability section. There are three date settings here. The first one, if you choose to use it, indicates the date when this assignment will be available for students to make a submission. Prior to that time, students will not be able to submit work for that assignment. Similarly, the due date, if you choose to use it, indicates the point after which the assignment is late. Students will still be allowed to submit work for that assignment, but it will be marked as late. The third date indicator is the cutoff date. If you choose to use it, this is the point at which submissions will no longer be allowed. You choose whether to use these things simply by clicking the Enable checkbox. This last checkbox indicates whether the description up here should be visible to students before submissions are allowed. So when I'm not using the allowed submissions date, this is grayed out. If I were to enable the allowed submissions date, now I can choose to uncheck this box, which means this description will not be visible to students until this date. Now you can use any combination of these settings. So let's review some of the possibilities. With the current settings, students will not be able to see the description for the assignment until July 31st, nor will they be able to submit any work for the assignment until that date. If I check this box, students will not be able to submit work for this assignment until July 31st, but they will be able to see the description If I add a due date, any submissions for this assignment that occur after August the 7th will be allowed but will be marked as late. And when I enable the cutoff date, now any submissions that occur after July the 31st will not be allowed at all. With them all unchecked, the assignment is visible to students at all times and submissions will be allowed at all times. Let's next look at submission types. There are two types of submissions students can make. One is online text. That will give students a text box like this one to type in information for their assignment. File submissions will allow students to attach documents as their submission of work. If students are submitting files, you can indicate a maximum number of files that may be uploaded. And you can put limits on the size of the file that can be uploaded. In most cases, 1 megabyte is plenty large enough for students. Some exceptions to this might include videos or PowerPoints with lots of images or embedded video. In those cases, it might make more sense for students simply to use the online text submission to send you a link to a OneDrive document. One thing to bear in mind when students submit OneDrive documents, however, is that if the cutoff date and the due dates are very important to you, OneDrive could be used to get around those due dates. Because a student could submit a OneDrive link prior to the due date or the cutoff date, but then continue to edit the document in OneDrive after those dates. So if it is important to you to be sure you have the student's work as of the date of submission, you will want students to submit a file. Let's move now to feedback types. This specifies the ways in which you can give feedback to students. One is feedback comments. That's simply, again, going to be a text box like this where you can type your feedback. Another is feedback files. This will allow you to upload files of your own to provide back to the student as feedback. Beginners should ignore offline grading worksheet. Let's look now at submission settings. And I should add that here and everywhere else you see one of these blue circles with a question mark in it. If you click that icon, you will get a pop-up window that gives you more information about that particular control. If you require students to click a submit button, a button will appear beneath your assignment that students click to indicate that their submission is complete. So that we can see this in action, I'm going to select yes. You can also require that students click a submission statement. This statement simply requires a student to affirm that the work being submitted is their own work and not something they've borrowed from another source. Again, I will set this to yes so that we can see it in action. The next two address multiple attempts. If I select never, the student will not be allowed any additional attempts on the assignment. If I select manually, then the student may make subsequent attempts, but only after the teacher manually allows the additional attempt. Last, I can select automatically until pass, which will give the student additional attempts until the grade earned on the assignment is a passing grade. If I have chosen to manually or automatically allow additional attempts, the maximum attempts drop-down becomes active. This drop-down indicates the number of additional attempts the student can have. The number can be set to unlimited or somewhere between 1 and 30. Beginners should ignore the group submission settings. So let's look next at notifications. If you want to be notified by email that a student has made a submission, you would set this to yes. Notice when I did that, the second option, to be notified about late submissions, is grayed out, because if I'm notified about all submissions, that will include late submissions. If I set this to no, I've chosen not to be notified of all submissions, which means then I may still choose to be notified about late submissions. Let's move next to the grade section. Here I make some choices about what the grade options are for this assignment. My options are completed or not, satisfactory or not. Ignore the fact for now that there are two of those. Also ignore separate and connected ways of knowing. I could assign no grade to the assignment, or I can select the top possible grade as anything from 100 down to 1. Again, this is the maximum possible grade. When I grade individual assignments, I'll have the ability to give each one its own grade up to the maximum possible. Beginners should ignore the rest of the grade options. With that, you've set all the options you need to for an assignment, and we can save and return to the course. And that's how you add an assignment to your Moodle course.